Good morning. It is Monday, September 22nd, 2014. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, Fatah and Hamas delegations meet for mediation before indirect negotiations with Israel begin in Cairo tomorrow. A day after the Scottish referendum, Catalonia's parliament votes in favor of giving its regional president the power to call an independence. And later on the show, legendary singer Leonard Cohen turns 80 and releases a new album. Good morning. I am Yael Levi, and we begin with our main topic of the day. Egypt is hosting talks between rival Palestinian factions Fatah and Hamas today, to be followed by indirect negotiations between Palestinians and Israelis on the ceasefire in Gaza, according to Egyptian sources. Now, the negotiations are set to tackle a number of unresolved issues, including a Palestinian demand for a seaport and airport in Gaza, and Israel's demand for militants in the territory to disarm. They will also touch on a proposed prisoner swap agreement that would see Hamas releasing the remains of 2 Israeli soldiers killed in the fighting in exchange for Israel freeing Palestinian detainees. We are joined in studio by I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev. Tal, good morning to you.
Good morning, Anne.
And by the Levantine Group consultancy president and security analyst Daniel Nisman. Daniel, good morning to you. Before we end from Ramallah, we'll be joined later on by Fatah Revolutionary Council member Dimitri Dilani. Let's start this right off. Tal, first of all, actually, you know what, Daniel, I will start with you, because I'm looking at the day today, and that is Fatah and Hamas in Cairo resolving their differences. I think one of the main issues for the indirect talks with Israel at the crust of this thing is Fatah and Hamas actually agreeing on the same platform. Is that something that's even achievable if we're looking at Fatah President Mahmoud Abbas just a few days ago, last week, basically calling out Hamas, saying we can't do anything together if you continue operating what he deems a shadow government?
Well, it's important to understand that the Gaza conflict is basically a trilateral conflict, okay? You have a conflict between Israel and Hamas, and then at the same time you have a conflict between Hamas, the Palestinian Authority run by Mahmoud Abbas, and Egypt. And all of them are connected. So Hamas had gone into conflict with Israel, in essence, to also solve its grievances with the other parties, the PA and Egypt. At this point, I don't see any reason why the Palestinian Authority or Egypt or even Israel needs to give into Hamas on any of their demands.
But I mean, case in point is the Palestinian Authority did, just a few weeks before the last conflict, sign a unity government agreement with Hamas. So they were trying to resolve, and they're still trying to resolve this. Like, it's been 7 years, I think, of this strife.
7 years. But it's important to understand that, yes, there was a unity government, but in fact, there are no Hamas members in this actual government. It's basically a unity government supported by Hamas, not including Hamas. It is seen in Gaza as something of a farce. Hamas has not received any of the concessions that it said that were promised to it. For example, there are over 42,000 civil service employees in Gaza that have still not received payment. The PA is withholding those funds. Hamas is almost being made a fool of, which is one of the reasons why they went into this conflict 3 months ago in the first place, to try and get some of these concessions through force that they couldn't get through negotiations. But now when you go into these talks in Cairo, Hamas versus the PA, Hamas versus Israel, they're basically going in with their back against the wall. They're facing a population in Gaza that overwhelmingly supports the ceasefire, meaning they do not want to resume fighting, which leaves Hamas with very little options to pressure or leverage its opponents on both sides. It was an Israeli official yesterday said that there's a very, very low chance that Hamas will resume conflict. Everybody knows that this strip is very, very badly damaged, which leaves Hamas with very, very few options to try to get some of these concessions and get out of the corner that it's been put in. That's been put in,
but irrespective of the ability of Hamas to resume fighting, that said, what seemed to be, quote-unquote, their independence war in the last conflict. We are joined on the phone right now by Dimitri Dilani, Fatah Revolutionary Council member in Ramallah. Dimitri, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Now, touching on that point, would you agree that Hamas has been weakened in the last conflict? And what is the chance, before we move on to indirect negotiations, but what's the chance of Fatah and Hamas resolving their differences in what seems to be a very fragile unity government there?
As you guys said, it's not a unity government. It's a reconciliation, non-partisan government. There are no members of Hamas in that government. Hamas has been strengthened politically after the last Israeli aggression against Gaza, and its political position either in Gaza or in the West Bank has become stronger. It's much more difficult for internal negotiations now since their position has improved. But at the end of the day, the PA is very firm on having one government, one law that governs both sides or both divisions of the PA territory, which is Gaza and the West Bank. This is an essential point in the negotiations. And I believe that Hamas at this point is looking to score political points against Fatah and stress its appearance as victorious after the recent aggression.
The recent conflict. Dimitri, do stay with us because that's a great point that I want to move to Tal Shalev. Tal, I-24 News diplomatic correspondent. Hamas trying to score political points. At the end of the day, today they're meeting with Fatah. Tomorrow it's the indirect talks with Israel. That's the million-dollar question. Is everything going to resume? But isn't Hamas, and I'm asking you, does the upper political echelon in Israel feel that? Aren't they coming out strengthened? Even though, Gaza is in terrible condition, but they have managed basically to, gain political capital. Am I right in saying that?
Well, it's not clear that that's not in the Israeli leadership's interest to have Hamas gain political capital. Israel did have the option throughout the operation to topple Hamas. There were voices inside the Israeli government and the security cabinet calling to move to that track of action. But the Israeli prime minister decided not to do so. He had an interest in preserving the Hamas rule of the Gaza Strip, and also he has an interest in preserving the separation between the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, because it weakens actually the Palestinian Authority and the other long-term Middle East peace process. But I do think we should lower expectations from this round of talks between Israel and Palestinians that will be resuming tomorrow in Cairo. Basically, the initial agreement that was signed almost a month ago said that it was written that within a month the sides would meet again in Cairo to continue discussions. That is what's happening. That's what's happening. They're just meeting again to continue discussions, and Israeli officials are downgrading expectations from this round of talks. We're hearing about the prisoners. We're hearing about the Israeli demand to have the bodies of the two killed soldiers from the operation. This will be on the table, but nobody is expecting a significant breakthrough. Hamas is not getting an airport yet, and Hamas is not getting a seaport yet. And from many inside the Israeli cabinet and the Israeli political system do not think that they should be getting those at all. So at this point, Israel, of course, is not interested in them gaining any more political capital, but they're also not very disappointed that at the same time Fatah and Hamas continue to fight. When your enemies fight, it's easier for you to fight them.
Well, sadly, it serves a certain purpose. And Daniel, I want to ask you this. The demands on the Palestinian Hamas side to ease the, first of all, let's go seaport and airport, which clearly most likely are not going to happen. But even easing the siege, even that would be political capital. Is that something that Israel can actually capitulate to?
Well, there are things that Israel can play around with. There's the agricultural area that's near the border. They can extend that from a couple hundred meters to almost a kilometer. There's the fishing zones, which Hamas has demanded to extend to 12 miles. Israel, I believe, has agreed to extend it to 6. There are the certain amount of trucks that can go through each crossing. There's the amount of inspections at each crossing. Hamas wants no inspections at Israeli crossings. One thing that Israel cannot help with is the Rafah border crossing,
right,
which is controlled by Egypt, of course. That has been, if not even a greater demand by Hamas during the conflict, as much as the demand is opening up the Erez and Kerem Shalom crossings. Egypt, which is currently investing a huge amount of money in expanding the Suez Canal, I find it very difficult to believe that they will allow the Rafah border crossing to be open, let alone a seaport or an airport, because then weapons will just flow into the Sinai Peninsula and destabilize
the
area.
Egyptians have been trying to fight for the last several years. Well, which begs the question, what's the point of these negotiations altogether? But in that respect, Dimitri Dilani in Ramallah joining us. I think the Fatah and Hamas, strife that has still been going on, and as you said, it's not really a unity government, it's this agreement. But can Fatah afford in the West Bank, and that's my question to you, because there is an ideological support for Hamas. And there were even reports several weeks ago that there was a coup attempted against Fatah by Hamas people in the West Bank. Doesn't it destabilize Fatah in the West Bank to actually sit with Hamas, who's having this political capital gain after operations against Israel?
I believe that talks about military coup could not be more fictitious because our security on the ground is very strong. There is popular support. Now, it has been negatively affected by the aggression on Gaza, where people tend to support Hamas in that aggression, which is only natural to support any party that fights the state that put us under siege and build settlements on our land and prohibit the peace process and being so right-wing radical. But at the end of the day, this support, this emotional support, will disappear in a few months if the Palestinian Authority was enabled to conduct its role with no more obstruction by the state of Israel. At the end of the day, yes, Israel wants Hamas to be strong enough to be a threat to Fatah and the begin.A. Israel does not want Fatah or does not care to have the peace camp, which is represented by Fatah within the Palestinian territories, to have that peace camp strong because it exposes the right-wing government of Israel. So there is a mutual interest between the right wing in Israel and Hamas to keep things at a controlled level of political support in order to feed off the hatred that each side feeds into their supporters in order to stay popular. Imagine if all these threats or all these nonsense threats coming out of Gaza disappear. The Israeli people will be looking more towards the rational majority peace camp in Palestinian street. And by looking into that, by connecting to these people who are the vast majority of the Palestinian people, they will topple the government that includes Bennett, Lieberman, Netanyahu. They would look for somewhere else where people can build peace. In other words, Netanyahu did not topple Hamas in Gaza, but at the same time, he doesn't want Hamas to get to a point where it causes a security threat. And this makes the equation on the other side, Fatah and the peace camp, to stay weaker at a weak point. And this whole thing about the military coup is another PR action by Netanyahu and his government, because so far Netanyahu has been the greatest PR person, but the worst politician probably in the history of Israel.
Well, again, you know, some can claim things on the other side as well, but we're going to leave it at that. That said, Talshalev, you have something to say about that.
Well, just to talk about politics and internal politics on the Palestinian side and how that is preventing the reconstruction of Gaza Strip at the moment, Israel has agreed to implement a UN mechanism that will ensure building materials and construction materials to enter the Gaza Strip. That depends on the fact that PA security forces will be on the ground in Gaza to accompany the materials from the minute they cross the Israeli-Gaza border, to make sure that they do not go to tunnels, but they go to schools or they go to homes or housing. Right. And at the moment, that is an obstacle. Hamas is putting an obstacle to that mechanism because it is not yet agreed to have Palestinian security officers as real officers, but only as observers. So the politics on the Palestinian side at the moment are the ones that are, from many points of view, they are the ones that are preventing and delaying the reconstruction of Gaza, not the Israeli politics. It is true that there's a lot of Israeli politics on this side, but Israel's interest is to help reconstruction and rehabilitation of Gaza in the as soon as possible, because Israel does understand and has been hearing warnings from a lot of diplomatic officials that if the situation in Gaza doesn't change very quickly, then violence can erupt very quickly again too.
Well, which has been the case mostly in every single conflict at the last several years. I want to move this a bit forward. Dimitri Delani still on the phone with us, but Daniel Nisman, this is September. It's the UN General Assembly month. Everybody's gathering there. We're coming off of this horrific, terrible, bloody conflict, and I think both sides have a lot to lose. I mean, if there's a move within, the Palestinian Authority, once once again, as the threat has been said, to go and call for, unilateral statehood, whatnot. What can Israel do, and how can this be resolved or helped by the UN?
Well, I think looking at the diplomatic arena right now, in the backdrop of the UN General Assembly, as opposed to the previous few years, Palestinian statehood, even the Palestinian issue, Gaza reconstruction, you almost don't hear about it in the UN General Assembly. You've got issues, the issue of the Islamic State is dominating the UN Security Council, the UN General Assembly. You have Ebola, you have the conflict in Yemen, you have the conflict in Libya.
But you know that the two sides are going to come to the UN General Assembly and try to push the agenda, and there is, there's basically on the heels of this summer. There's something that can be done there.
Well, that's a card that Mahmoud Abbas, it's what in Israel they like to call diplomatic rockets, okay? Hamas has been launching real rockets. What Mahmoud Abbas is able to do is to pressure Israel using all these diplomatic weapons. And a move to advance unilateral statehood, joining more UN bodies, is something that he does retain. And it is reasonable to assume that at least in the UNGA, where there are unbinding resolutions, that is something that he will be able to pass with a deal of ease.
Dimitri Jelani in Ramallah joining us from the West Bank. Is that something that Fatah and Mahmoud Abbas is planning in New York and the UN General Assembly that starts this week? And what can be done there to try and progress the agenda of the Palestinian statehood?
After the president visit to Paris and getting European support, now there are talks with the U.S. administration. The result of these talks would determine how far we would go within the UN and how many of its bodies will be joining. But any move that we will be having in the UN, it's not going to be us alone. We have the Arab world, the Islamic world behind us, and many of the European countries.
But sadly, you still do not have the United States completely behind the Palestinian state.
No, absolutely not, and we do not expect that. But also South America is behind us. China is behind us. So we're going with a lot of force, and I believe that we do have a very important and strong position that we will try to play to our advantage without causing too much political loss as a result of the biased position of the United States. But again, the United States, just like any other country in the world, has its interests, and it depends on our talks on how much we can push our interests to be common versus the interest of settlement building and aggression that is adopted by the state of Israel.
It's still, finally, Tal Shalev, when we're looking at the UN General Assembly, I got to ask you, first of all, it might be coming on the heels of a resumed fighting here, if it's the 25th, at the end of the week. But is Netanyahu facing a very, very chilled, well, he always is, but a very chilled reception there? And isn't this an assembly that actually poses a lot of, hardship for the Israeli Prime Minister?
Well, Netanyahu, I think he's hoping to get any kind of welcoming or greeting at the moment, because he, again, last year, he's arriving actually after the whole party is over. The UN General Assembly starts on Wednesday. The main speeches are Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And Netanyahu is only arriving after the Jewish holiday, the Jewish New Year, only on Monday. And that means that a lot of the action, he's missing out a lot of the action, and he is also missing out, the momentum. So it could work. Last year, the Prime Minister's office people were briefing that it works for him, it's good for him, but the fact was that he arrived after President Rouhani's charm offensive and kind of looked like a party pooper, and he is at the same risk of doing that again, because while we can see again a rapprochement between Iran and Israel, Iran and the U.S., John Kerry and Zarif meeting yesterday, they're supposed to meet again in the upcoming days, and we're hearing new agreements, new proposals in the nuclear talks. Netanyahu is not happy about this closening between Iran and the U.S. regarding the Islamic State, and we can probably say for sure that will be the top issue on his agenda in his speech, and not the Palestinian statehood. He will probably be addressing it, but the main point will again be Iran's nuclear weapon and any concessions hands and warning against any concessions from the West to Iran at this point.
Meanwhile, as a ceasefire is about to end between Israel and Gaza. But Tal Shalev, I-24 News diplomatic correspondent, thank you for joining us. Daniel Nisman, thank you for being with us as well. And Dimitri Dilani from Ramallah, West Bank, thank you for being with us this morning. Staying in the region, approximately 60,000 of Syria's Kurds fled across the border into Turkey in the last 24 hours to escape Islamic State fighters. Let's first take a look at the following report and then take it from there.
The upheaval in Syria and Iraq, brought on by the rise of the Islamic State terrorist group, has been spilling over into neighboring countries for some time now, but during recent days the situation along Syria's border with Turkey has reached a boiling point. Thousands of Turkish Kurds clashed Sunday with Turkish security forces near the border as they attempted to cross into Syria and join their Kurdish brethren, who are engaged in the fight against IS. The PKK, the rebel group which has been fighting for Kurdish independence from Turkey for decades, has called on Turkish Kurds to rush to the defense of the Syrian town of Ain al-Arab, known as Kobani in Kurdish, following the recent capture of a number of neighboring villages by IS. While some Kurdish volunteers are eager to join the battle, around 70,000 refugees have fled across the border into Turkey since Friday as a result of the jihadist advance, with Kurdish forces inside Syria abandoning as many as 100 villages. The crisis along the border comes just as Turkey secured the release Saturday of 46 Turkish hostages held by IS, along with 3 Iraqis. The Turkish government claims the operation was carried out through peaceful means without international assistance, but one member of the country's ruling AKP party tweeted that the CIA was responsible. The hostage issue was one of the main obstacles standing in the way of Turkey's joining the anti-IS international coalition, but the Turks remain reluctant to join the effort, in part because they would prefer to avoid strengthening the Kurdish push for independence. While the fighting and humanitarian crisis roll on, so too does the social media campaign being waged by the Islamic State, with a new video featuring regime soldiers digging their own graves following their capture.
And we're here with the soldiers of Bashar. You can see them now digging their own graves in the very place where they were stationed. And behind them you can see the officers' residence filled with bullet holes and artillery shells from the Islamic State.
Another reminder of the price of failure in dealing with this new threat facing the region.
And we are joined from Erbil in Iraq by freelance reporter Hermione G. Hermione, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Well, first of all, thank you for being with us. I know this is mostly dealing with, the Kurds fleeing into Turkey, which is a problem on its own. But, you are in what people, would want to see, I think the Kurds would want to see, as Kurdistan at the end of this entire conflict. Given the fact that, there are so many Kurds fleeing now into Turkey, what is going on in northern Iraq? I mean, is there an expectation that after this battle is over against IS, that there will be some sort of concessions, not even concessions, but that the Kurdish people and the Peshmerga will get what they believe they deserve?
Well, I think it's complicated. On the one hand, as we saw very early on in this crisis, that's exactly what the Kurds here in Iraq laid out. They said they were going to hold a referendum, come hell or high water, and essentially declare independence. However, the recent situation has really complicated things, not least because it's shown the Kurds that perhaps they are not yet ready to become independent, partly because their security forces proved not to be really adequate when it came down to it, and certainly lack the weapons. So I think the genie is out of the bottle, certainly. We will see greater push for independence, but the question is simply when it will happen. And then there's a further complication, namely that there's a lot of political differences between the Kurds in Iraq, in Syria, and in Turkey. So if we do start to see different Kurdish areas becoming independent, there's still a long, long way to go before you would see a sort of greater Kurdistan that would incorporate all those Kurdish areas that are now split across these different countries in the region.
No, very good point, because aren't sectarian differences something that we in this region know so well? But speaking of that, when it comes to the Kurds of northern Iraq and the Kurds of Syria and the Kurds of Turkey, what are the differences in those sections? What do those people want as opposed to the ones in Syria?
Well, the Turkish Kurds are very much part of the PKK. I mean, they follow Abdullah Öcalan, the leader of the PKK, who's currently imprisoned in Turkey. And they have a Marxist agenda. Their main agenda is a greater Kurdistan. And what they don't like about what they see here in Iraqi Kurdistan, in the Kurdish Autonomous Region of Iraq, is that the Kurds here seem to be focusing more on establishing the state establishing the Iraqi Kurdish state. And so there are differences there about whether the Kurds here are doing enough for the greater Kurdistan. That's sort of the main problem. And currently, the real issue we're seeing, the real division we're seeing between the Kurdistan regional government here in Iraq and the Kurds in Turkey, in Syria, is really a battle for control. The President Barzani of Iraqi Kurdistan wants to have more control over what's happening in Syria, whereas there they have a very well-established Kurdish authority already, and they are resisting that. They're saying, look, we're going to run our own area, and we don't want interference from the Iraqi Kurds at this point.
Right. Finally, I mean, would you say, you're in Erbil, you're in Iraq, I mean, is there a sense that this IS big foe that the entire Western world is dealing with, that it's being pushed back in northern Iraq, that fight is succeeding in some way, shape, or form? Because at the end of the day, it is the Kurds who are fighting it where you're at, correct?
Certainly in northern Iraq, yes. And yes, they are being pushed back. I mean, there's definitely, as you travel around northern Iraq, it definitely feels as if the crisis has passed. I mean, obviously, there's still a huge amount of disruption, many displaced people. If you go into Nineveh province, where I was a few days ago, the villages are empty. It's a ghost town because everybody's fled. But having said that, the immediate danger seems to have passed. However, it's really a question of having pushed the ISIS out of certain areas, but into other areas, as we're now seeing in Syria.
Right.
So the immediate danger here may have passed, but it's certainly, we haven't even begun to scratch the surface really of the problem, which is actually eradicating the ISIS from the region and really getting rid of them. One last thing that we're seeing is that as the US strikes and now French strikes, Iraqi airstrikes, are taking effect on the militants, they're now resorting to guerrilla tactics. We're seeing many more car bombs. We're seeing attacks inside Baghdad, inside other cities. So the situation has changed, certainly, but it's by no means an end of the crisis.
No, definitely. And as you mentioned, guerrilla warfare, something that's, I think, has proven very hard to the Western world to deal with. Hermione G., fabulous having you with us, as always. Thank you for joining us this morning. Now, coming up next, Iran is willing to join the United States in its fight against IS, but demands American flexibility on its nuclear aspirations. We, of course, will tell you all about it. First, though, let's hear some more of this morning headlines. So, Imula. Good morning, I-24 News Morning Edition, the place you should be, September 22nd, 2014, and I'll tell you why. Because it's where we say hello and good morning to Anthony Grant. I must change that line. Who joins us today? Yeah, I know. Joins us daily to discuss the news you missed while scanning the headlines. What did we miss?
Well, good morning, first of all. And a great article by an Italian journalist in Ynet News that I saw early this morning with this headline, in Gaza, hatred for Hamas and resentment of West bankers. And what I liked about this article is that this Italian journalist
hatred
wrote
for Hamas and resentment for West bankers? Okay.
Yeah. It's a very, you have a European journalist here sort of giving a real, for lack of a better phrase, slice of life story about the enmity that appears to be harbored by many people in Gaza, even though they're not so comfortable voicing it.
Right.
And also some resentment against the West Bank, because apparently, according to the article, places like in Ramallah, other Nablus, it's kind of a boom town, a lot of good economic development, relatively speaking, and there wasn't much support from West bankers for what was going on in Gaza, according to the sources mentioned in the article.
No,
interesting.
Fascinating, and I want to put, we have Ali Walker in the studio for our next segment, and I'm raising this just as a question, because when I read these things that resentment is soaring against Hamas, and this is, it's great that you brought this headline. Are we to believe that? Because isn't it true, though, that after every operation, if Hamas is actually managing to kind of maintain the status quo, that they come out as the winners within Gaza? Or am I wrong? in saying that.
Yeah, and the polls show the feelings of the Palestinian population is very paradoxical. On one hand, they admire what Hamas made during the war, and we saw this in the polls.
Right.
On the other hand, they understand that the fact that Hamas is strengthened somehow means that they will keep being in their mess, and we saw the pictures of those who tried to immigrate from the Gaza Strip via the sea and found their death, and this showed the desperation of the Palestinian population in the Gaza Strip. But it is not new that there is this tension between the Gaza Strip and between the West Bank. And even those who fled Hamas in the 2007-2008 still find very hard to live in the West Bank. They are considered in Ramallah as foreigners, as people coming from Gaza, and I'm not surprised to see this article.
No, very true. Actually, I have a friend who fled in 2007, is in Ramallah, doesn't feel at home yet. Yes, sorry, it was a discussion with making.
And here's a related story, well, sort of. Los Angeles Times, the Islamic State is recruiting women to have kids and cook.
My husband? No.
They are,
yes.
According to the article,
recruiting women to have kids and cook.
The so-called Islamic State is taking to social media to attract women to marry their fighters and beget children as part of their larger strategy of state building.
Nice.
There you go.
No, thank you for that one. As I said, it sounds like every
That's
man.
a whopper, isn't it?
Whopper. So in many ways, it does still sound, well, either if they're from the 50s, right?
Yeah, which century?
By the way, the photo of this of the leader al-Baghdadi about the
watch that he was wearing, the
according
controversy.
to social media, it was a Rolex, a very expensive Rolex.
That doesn't jive very well with the whole,
exactly.
with the
and
ideology.
this reflects how wealthy is the Islamic State.
Yeah, lots of money pouring into their coffers. We're not exactly sure from where.
Yes.
Anyway, so that's going on there. Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung.
Allgemeine Zeitung.
Thank you. I was waiting for you to correct my
Natürlich.
German.
Wir können auch Deutsch sprechen, aber
yes. Well, verboten, we understand what that means.
Yes.
And WhatsApp and Viber are about to be verboten in Iran. According to...
don't take WhatsApp away from the people of Iran.
Yeah, well, basically, Iran's telecom minister has said that there have been messages circulating against Ayatollah Khomeini, not Khamenei, but Khomeini, the founder of the Islamic Republic. And apparently they have issued a 1-month ultimatum for the government to ban WhatsApp, Viber, and Tango. So that could boost internet restrictions in Iran, where we know they have internet restriction issues.
Yeah, very sad to see that. Yes.
Yeah, we'll see if Rouhani steps in on that one. We're not sure yet. Over the weekend, there was a big protest march against climate change, inaction, I should say, protesting that.
Right.
Thousands were marching in New York City and other cities around the world as well, apparently. So that was
no, and the pictures from New York were
see.
quite striking. There was like a lot of, you saw, there we have it.
Right.
Amazing to see, such a turnout, and that's a climate conference taking place this week, which will follow in a few days.
Yep.
Yes.
Also, on a more international note, it's been reported in the International Business Times that Kate Middleton has canceled her trip to Malta, which was going to be her first solo trip planned
while pregnant.
And apparently it has upset the Duchess of Cornwall, Camilla Parker Bowles, because she thinks that she should carry on with her official duties regardless of any morning sickness kind of issues. Now, this is not confirmed, but I'm just conveying the message. But there could be a little...
No, too, for not taking sides. And, well, I hope she tells Camilla Parker Bowles to stuff it. But I'm sorry.
Well, we love all British royalty.
We love all British royalty,
anyway,
but if somebody who's experienced morning sickness, come on.
You need your time and your space.
Yeah.
Malta can wait.
Bingo. Yes.
Back to a British newspaper, The Telegraph, report this very timely story, which we know we've discussed in certain ways, how Qatar is funding the rise of Islamist extremists. Interesting here, it says that basically Qatar is bankrolling the Islamists who are now in control of Libya's capital, the capital of Libya.
Right.
So this is sending flights full of weapons and all that sort of thing into the city of Misrata. 100 miles east of Tripoli. So again, this is a recurring theme in all the world's media, but also Qatar owns a lot of property in London, and so they're starting to become aware of the dichotomy.
Dichotomy, yeah.
Yeah.
No, fascinating how, as we said, the Western world cannot actually pull away from the Middle East every time they think they're out. But yes, there we have it.
Yeah, and Qatar, of course, a big American base there.
Yep.
If we have time for something in New York, on a nice note here, the final phase of the High Line Elevated Park opened up on Sunday. And apparently it is dramatic and beautiful. And this is, for those who don't know, this is the disused railway from a long time ago, which has been converted into a park.
It is. Have you been?
Yes,
it's beautiful.
It's stunning.
It's stunning.
Yeah, you have views of the Hudson River on one side and the New York City skyline on the other.
Exactly.
And it stretches now from all the way from, I guess, Greenwich Village now up to 30th Street and 10th Avenue. So that's a long.
It's past Chelsea already.
It's right, like just
nice.
before the Penn Station area. So this is a major tourist draw, of course, in New York City as well.
You and I basically are having a New York moment here.
New York moment there,
exactly.
yeah.
Yes.
So.
And finally last
back
one.
to Britain in the wake of the Scottish referendum and the no vote. There's going to be a meeting today at David Cameron's country residence in Chequers in Buckinghamshire, and they're going to be talking about Cameron's pledge of English votes for English laws. So basically, Scottish MPs could find themselves being banned from voting on English-only issues.
Payback time.
It's payback time. The Queen said to think carefully, and she meant it.
Yeah, what are you going to do next? Take their kilts away and put them outside in the cold. I'm loving this. It's payback time.
Yeah, so that's interesting to see this week, too.
Yeah, not good to be Scottish this week in England. Tony, thank you. You're going to be with us also next hour.
See you in a bit.
On to our next topic, and of course, dominating the news as always is IS, and this time in connection with Iran. Iran is ready to work with the United States and its allies to stop Islamic State militants, but it would like to see more flexibility on its country's uranium enrichment program. Senior Iranian officials told Reuters yesterday. We are joined in studio by I-24 News senior Middle East analyst Ali Waqed. Ali, good morning to you. Before anything else, let's take a look at the following report and then break it down.
Iran is ready to work with the United States and its allies to stop Islamic State militants, but would like to see more flexibility on Iran's uranium enrichment program. Senior Iranian officials were quoted by Reuters as saying, "Iran is a very influential country in the region and can help in the fight against the ISIL terrorists, but it is a two-way street. You give something, you take something." This behind-the-scenes information emphasizes how complicated it may be for the Western powers to keep the nuclear negotiations separate from other regional conflicts. But at the moment, the United States and its allies are determined to keep the nuclear negotiations focused exclusively on atomic issues as the November 24 deadline for a deal nears. Yet diplomats close to the current round of talks in New York say they are unlikely to reach a long-term accord that would lift sanctions in exchange for curbs on Iranian nuclear ambitions. But the IS threat is the inevitable subject at this time and place, and both Tehran and Washington are sending mixed signals. Only last Friday, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said Iran has a role to play in defeating the Islamic State, indicating that the U.S. position may also be shifting.
The fact is, there is a role for nearly every country in the world to play, including Iran, whose foreign minister is here with us today. ISIL poses a threat to all of us, and we're committed to working in close partnership with the new Iraqi government and countries around the world to defeat it.
But in the meantime, Iran isn't convinced that the U.S. government is serious in its effort to battle the Islamic State.
If you undermine the central government in Syria, that would enable the IS terrorists to gain even more territory. We see this as basically contradiction in terms of trying to defeat ISIS, but at the same time funding those who are trying to undermine the very government that is withstanding ISIS terrorists.
So as confusion regarding Iran's role in the anti-IS coalition grows and the expectations from the current round of nuclear talks are low, it will be not easy for either side to stay focused and reach its goals.
Joined in studio by Ali Waqed, senior Middle East analyst for I-24 News. Fascinating stuff, because you and I were sitting all last year, this time around. Iran was the big issue, dominating the UN General Assembly. That is about to happen again this year. How much, first of all, how much do the Americans need the Iranians in this coalition? They do in many ways, don't they?
They need the Iranian because of the simple reason that Iran still have huge impact influence over Iraq. And yesterday, the Iranian gave a small hint about the role that they can play in the region in the coup d'etat that could happen in Yemen, for example, supporting the Houthi militia who took control over large parts of the country. The government in place, the Yemeni government in place, is supported by both the United States and Saudi Arabia, and the militia that was supported by Iran succeeded to take a large part of the capital and the army headquarters, etc. So Iran is playing a huge role in Syria, in Iraq, and you cannot ignore Iran. And this is why both Khamenei and even Rouhani, with his very sympathetic Western attitude and language, are criticizing this coalition, accusing this coalition of being a virtual and non-complete coalition. And Iran wants to get two things in raising the role that it can play. One is keep their interest in Iraq, and of course reduce the threat that this coalition can have over Syria and over the regime of Bashar Assad. But without a role of Iran, and the nature of this role can be discussed, but without a role of Iran, we can anticipate and say that the success of the coalition will be less than it can be with an active role of Iran in the coalition.
And putting the coalition aside, Iranian fighters are already on the ground in Iraq actually fighting against IS, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. But the problem with the Iranians is they are trying to do an immediate link between the two files, the IS file and their nuclear file. And this is why the Western are not so enthusiastic to give Iran a major role in this coalition, because we were talking about Scotland and the payback. Right. They know that there will be a payback also here to Iran in this nuclear file, and there are here more elements to take into consideration. The Israeli position, right. The Saudi position. The Saudis, who can swallow some role of Iran in the coalition, will not accept any compromise over Iranian nuclear file. This is why the role of the United States is very delicate. They want Iran not to spoil their coalition. They want Iran to help them in containing the Islamic State. But on the other hand, they know how limited they are in paying back to Iran in the matter of their nuclear file. This is why the Iranians are raising a new formula that the talks can maintain after November.
Which is the deadline for the nuclear.
Exactly. Yeah. For the meanwhile, let's talk the lifting of some of the sanctions over Iran. And Israelis and the Saudis are right to be worried that this might be the payback for Iran.
And then a card that they will definitely play in the talks with the international arena about their nuclear aspirations. Ali Waqid, thank you as always for being with us. Tony, I will see you very shortly. After the break, let's talk about the next topic we'll be bringing you after the Scottish referendum. Catalonia approves holding a referendum of its own to possibly separate from Spain. Everybody wants to be independent. Though, first, let's hear some more of this morning headlines. Welcome back. It is still Monday, September 22nd, 2014. This is still the morning edition. Last I checked, I am still Yael Levi. Thank you for staying with us. And the story that just keeps on giving, even by 6 degrees of separation. Residents of Scotland decided they want to remain part of Britain. much to the happiness and joy of the Queen, but they rekindled the desire for independence of other nations in Europe. Parliament of Catalonia, a region in the northeast of Spain, passed a draft resolution for a referendum for independence that does not require and should take place on November 9th. Strongly opposed the government in Madrid. To hear more about it, we are joined in studio by I24 News senior editor Ruthie Sinai.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. This is fascinating stuff. Also joining us from Tel Aviv on the phone, foreign correspondent Enrique Zimmerman will be with us later. And Ruthie, okay, this was actually the trickle effect that everybody was afraid of.
Right.
It's still happening even though the Scots are remaining with Britain. What's going on with Catalonia?
Well, the Catalonians are saying, the fact that Scotland voted no, in essence, shouldn't deter us because they proved that this is the way to resolve conflicts. In other words, the government in London saw the wishes of the Scottish people, allowed them to have this referendum, and Spain should do the same. The government of Spain is saying, this is proof that, the people of Scotland were wise to vote against isolationism, secessionism, separatism, and the Catalonians should follow, in their footsteps. This referendum that they want to have in November is illegal. It's non-binding. We're going to go to the Constitutional Court of Spain. They're going to go probably tomorrow, because the Constitution basically states that any vote on secession has to be put to all Spaniards. The Catalonians are saying, what do you mean all Spaniards? Of course they're going to vote against. We are the wealthiest part of Spain. We have something like, we account for 20% of GDP, 16% of the population. Of course they're going to vote no. They don't want to lose us. They don't want to lose our tax money. So no, now if the Spanish Constitutional Court, rules against them, against the local government in Catalonia, which, by the way, is very much like Scotland in the sense that it has a local government, it has a local parliament, it has a lot of autonomy in terms of language and so on. But anyway, what they're saying is that if the Constitutional Court votes against, they may well go ahead and do it anyway. There's a lot of popular support in Catalonia for this referendum.
Interesting, and staying on this topic, we are joined on the phone by Enrique Zimmerman, foreign correspondent. Also, you're a former correspondent for. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. La Vanguardia. It's a Catalonian newspaper. Tell me, what do you make of this? And is this actually if this passes, is this the type of referendum that could actually release, quote unquote, Catalonia from Spain?
Well, I think we are in the middle of a storm, a huge storm in Spain, in Catalonia, to define how will look Spain in the future. Because it's not only Catalonia, it's also the Basques, and I think it will have lots of implications. But as you said, Catalonia is the wealthiest part of Spain. 1/5 of the economy is produced in Catalonia, and they feel really that they deserve it. After 300 years, they lost Barcelona and Catalonia in a battle exactly 300 years ago to Felipe V. They expect from Felipe VI, the new king of Spain, to solve this problem and to give to the Catalans the right of having self-determination. The problem is that in Madrid they are really not allowing that possibility. They're not accepting that possibility. And this referendum, really, I believe that nobody knows what will happen in November. It's not like in Scotland. I mean, it's only something that will give a moral strength to those supporting or those against independence in Catalonia. But I believe we are in the middle of this process that could bring us to a discussion, an internal discussion, a deeper one, a more serious one in Spain about the structure of the state. Is Spain going to stop being Spain as we know it for 500 years, since Fernando and Isabella kings declared one united Spain? Or are we going to see a new structure, like a federal structure in Spain in the future?
But Ruthie, do you think, I mean, that's a chance that's going to happen? Because it seems like...
I actually wanted to ask Enrique, if I may. Enrique, good morning. Do you think that this popular sentiment, pro-independence sentiment, if it really comes down, to the bottom line, are, for instance, residents of Barcelona really ready to be an independent state? Or is it just more of a wishful thinking?
Well, it's strange because things are changing. I know Catalonia very well. I used to live there for a while, and I felt always this feeling of the people that were repressed by Franco, by the dictatorship, for many, many years, and they couldn't even speak their language in the streets because they would be arrested.
Yeah, but it's been 40 years since he died, and now they can.
And exactly, and now I think that really the changing point was when the government in Madrid accepted to leave a big part of the taxes in the Basque country, but they refused to do the same with Catalonia. When this happened, I think it was the moment where I saw many people that never spoke about independence in the past. They spoke about autonomy, they spoke about their right to be as they want, but in the framework of Spain, suddenly you listen, I'm talking about intellectuals, journalists, professionals, people that say, you know what, we should be independent finally, and we should be alone. Now, there are huge problems because we know that the European Union wouldn't accept them. I mean, Catalonia would need to go all over to try to go to the process of being accepted by the European Union, for instance, and other many huge, really very important problems. But, I see that in the streets in Barcelona, I see really 50-50 today. Last 11th of September, which is the National Day, you had 1 million people supporting independence in the streets. That's a lot.
That's a lot of...
That's a lot of people demonstrating in the streets. You can never know what will happen if they will be in the same situation of the Scots and they will have a real referendum in the future. I suppose that before this real referendum, Madrid would do something to try to solve the problem and to leave Spain in the framework, to leave Catalonia in the framework of Spain.
Fascinating stuff, and Enrique, and Ruthie, I want to ask you also quickly, just in the greater picture of things, what are we looking at in Europe right now? There seems to be this shift of these smaller countries trying to, or regions, because we know Europe has been embattled for many, 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 many years, but trying to shift towards independence. I mean, the easy thing to say is that Europeans don't really like their unity, do they?
Yeah. Well, yes, but of course, then there's a question of what the alternative is.
Right.
Look, these small like Veneto or Bavaria or these other places that have pro-independence movements, it's not very realistic that they're going to break away. It is, I think, a question of will they get more devolved powers? Will they get more autonomy? But this trend towards sort of the pendulum. The pendulum. You had post-World War II history where countries were put together and
almost artificially sometimes.
Exactly, and borders were drawn, and then now you've sort of got used. It seems that the pendulum is swinging the other way. But I think that there are realities on the ground that are going to prevent too much of a disintegration here. I think just for the good of if people are rational, of course.
No, as Enrique said, at the end of the day, it's just too messy to break it apart, and it is Europe after all. We don't like mess, or they don't. Enrique Zimmermann joining us on the phone. Thank you for being with us this morning. Ruthie Sinai, thank you. You're locked in with us as we move on. And it is that time of morning and day in the week for the viral spiral that is anything that happens on the web. I wrote that line.
I have a feeling. And I love it.
The viral spiral.
The spiral.
The spiral viral, yeah. Tony.
Poetry in motion.
Isn't it? Yay me. No, Tony, what's on the web?
Naked celebrities.
Amen.
Okay. All right.
Good morning. Yes.
We are a morning show. No, this is causing quite a stir since yesterday afternoon. More celebrity nude pictures have been leaked apparently online, going right from the top with Kim Kardashian now. Now this was apparently it was leaked onto Reddit and 4chan, but taken quickly off line by these sites, but we're talking a lot of stars here. I mean, Kardashian, Avril Lavigne, Lake Bell, lots of them. So, the thing is they were pulled, but as we all know, you can delete a tweet, but if someone saw that tweet and takes a screenshot, it's out there. Now, of course, Kim Kardashian
I was about to say,
has been out there in many ways for a long time. It wasn't, so I think, this is sort of like water off a duck's back as far as the Kardashian is concerned. But the other ones, no, it is a major, breach of privacy. So
it's a major breach of privacy. The first thing that I would say, and Ruthie will probably agree with me, people stop taking naked pictures of yourselves.
Thank you. No, I have to say, if you are a celebrity, you want to get inside the mind of a celebrity, you have got like you've got a camera that's part of your body. You're taking pictures of yourself.
Tony, people do it even when they're not celebrities. 14-year-old girls do
it. Come out of the shower, don't snap the selfie.
Anna Wintour has never taken a selfie.
Thank you. And we should all be. Should be Anna Wintour.
In a way. Yeah. But no, point taken.
Yeah. And still, it's a major breach of privacy.
Major breach of privacy. Even though TMZ said that actually adding to that mix of the ones that were leaked, maybe even Rihanna. Now, this does devastation,
Beyond
because this is, of course, the big scandal with Rihanna is when she actually puts clothes on. So again, I think that she will brush this aside. With Jennifer Lawrence and stuff, that's a bigger issue because she's not a sort of a sex kitten actress or singer, I should say.
Isn't a 2-time Academy Award winning?
Major Hollywood player. So it's a different kind of breach in a way. But again, it's how are the people getting the pictures? I think the FBI is still investigating some aspects of this. So it's it sells tabloids, but it's also very controversial.
Maybe it's Edward Snowden.
Yes. I wouldn't put it past him. Now that guy, what he can get up, it's
exactly what he can get up. You never said that. What else?
Kate Hudson and Goldie Hawn can see dead people.
Right.
Yes. Kate Hudson, who was, of course, Goldie Hawn's daughter. They claim that they can have a fifth energy, and
is it the fifth or the sixth?
For them, it's the fifth.
It's the fifth. Okay.
And they say that they believe that their brains can manifest into visual things. And listen, if they say it, it has to be true. But we
all remember The Sixth Sense. I walked around for a year going, I see dead people.
Yeah, well, maybe they wanted roles, and maybe they want to be in the remake of that or something, and it's sort of advanced, publicity.
Yes.
But it's.
And this came about in an interview, or they just thought to bring it out public?
It was an interview about I think it was on a British television show, but this was the takeaway.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So interesting stuff there. And speaking of the deceased, Steve Jobs. Did you know that at Apple they're leaving his empty office untouched?
Creepy.
A little bit.
Yes. It's a nice gesture.
The Scientologists do that too with L. Ron Hubbard, apparently. So, So it's not unprecedented.
Really, it's unprecedented. Okay.
Yeah. So his office is frozen in time over there in Cupertino, and it's sort of a tribute to Steve Jobs and his legacy.
Yes. No.
It's like eating the apple and keeping it whole. Yeah.
Ka-ching.
Ka-ching. Ka-ching.
Who's cleaning it every morning?
Speaking of, maybe it's just collecting sacred dust.
Yep.
As is Cher. On her Dress to Kill tour, a little bit of controversy was stirred. Some people are suing her. There she is, claiming that she didn't want one of her choreographers to hire any more dark-skinned dancers, claiming her tour had too much color, allegedly. So.
Allegedly. We don't know that she said that for sure.
Her publicist, Liz Rosenberg, denies that.
It sounds very unshare, but...
there could have been, access to grind, I don't know. But, a little bit of Cher controversy just to
never hurts, never hurts. I could raise controversy just over that dress that she's wearing there, but that's just me. Yeah.
According to controversy in Kansas, at least until Friday, this artist, Holly Stewart, a grandmother, who actually a Greek friend brought this to my attention. She was quilting artistic interpretations of the phallus. And this was actually a show at the University of Missouri, Kansas.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's quilting. Beautifully put, the phallus.
Yes. Which was, worshipped in certain ancient Mediterranean circles, as we have talked about in previous shows. It started off on Kickstarter, this art project, and it was very popular, and so people think that it might be extended into another exhibition space.
She's quilting it?
It's like macrame.
No, I know she's calling it macrame, but I'm looking at it's a quilt, or is it actually some sort of a puff of thing standing up?
It's she used to work apparently in a factory that that made non macrame versions of those sorts of things. So that was her inspiration.
I can't bring that home. That's too much competition for my husband.
There are so many things I want to say.
Yes, but you know what? What about corruption?
Yes. What about
corruption?
corruption?
Have you taken the Mexican corruption tour?
Not
because
yet.
it's still the travel season. You can go on a bus
real quick
and see where corrupt politicians have done their stuff, and it's like watching animals in the jungle, according to one Mexican passerby.
Okay, we're done. Sadly, first the news. We get back. Good morning, welcome back. I-24 News Morning Edition, September 22nd, 2014, Where You Should Be. Why? Because Leonard Cohen is 80. Or actually, he turned 80 yesterday, right? It was yesterday. The man, Mazel Tov. The man that stands behind songs, books, and novel releases a new album. And for that reason, we are joined in studio by Haaretz columnist Uri Mizgav and one of the biggest fans. Can I say that?
It looks like everybody's a Leonard Cohen fan lately.
Okay, tell me, 80 years old, a new album?
Yes, and maybe the most interesting fact, 50 years of music career, it's only his 13th album.
Really?
Yeah, he took his time, he worked slow. By the way, in the opening song of this album, he says, I always take it slow.
No, but it actually shows, and Ronnie Stav in studio as well, our cultural contributor. You're a musician as well, right?
As well.
See,
yes.
I check up. I Googled you.
Yeah.
But creepy a little bit.
No, I like it.
Yeah, it takes, I think it does, artists or singers, would say that actually in order to come out with an album that, they've invested enough time in, it does take time,
Yeah, it did take it to the extreme, some terms of his career. But, we always say about him that he's maybe the best poet among musicians, the best musician among poets.
Yeah.
The thing with him is always the lyrics, the words. And that's what takes him so long. He keeps writing and rewriting his draft. He told all about it in the recent years when he was more open to the public. And the words are...
the words, if we're looking at songs like, Hallelujah to me, Speechless.
And Ring the Bells.
And Ring the Bells. And where's my lighter? I'm about to light one and put it out. Ring the Bells. And really so endemic of our, the latest generations. But, at 80 years old, I know, were you in his concert in Israel several years ago?
Are we going to scratch my bruises here today?
I'm sorry.
I was bad, but I was a good parent. As you well known, we had a baby at the age of a year old, and I sent my wife because she's the biggest Leonard Cohen fan.
She's a Leonard Cohen fan. What do you think is, other than just the lyrics, the thing that keeps Leonard Cohen so successful across generations? Again, 80 and kicking. What is it in his craft or in his music?
I will not surprise you this time.
Okay.
It's sheer quality. It's just very, very good at what he does. And as we said, it's craftsmanship. It's not just bringing out another song, another single, another album. He really puts his soul into his art.
And he's just so genuine about the craft. It's not about taking the crowd in. It's so much about just creating this aura of
true to his profession.
And of course, something happened to him in the last decade. It looks, he really turned 80. I checked it. It's not a lie. You can't believe it. He dances, he moves. He's not like, with all respect to the old generation that still do Vegas and do here and there, even in Israel. He's a rock star at the age of 80.
At the age of 80, he's not, the Vegas you're talking about, if I'm looking at another one of my favorite, actually, the Welsh guy, can't believe I keep forgetting him, Johns. Never mind. Delilah.
Tom Jones.
Tom Jones, thank you. Tom Jones, it's the Vegas shows. I love Tom Jones, by the way, but very different type of artists when it comes to that. So when you say something happened to him in the last decade, is that he remained a rock star in some way? Or actually became one, no?
And even, became one. He wasn't that successful the decades before. He actually kind of retired. He became a Zen Buddhist monk. And by the way, this all happened for a very happy accident. He was almost bankrupt. while he was in the
Right.
Californian monastery,
Right.
doing yoga and Zen, his former partner and accountant took all his money.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
he
they
had-
have been saying that the tour was because he was
Yeah,
I mean, that's like an urban myth. I don't know if
He kind
that's...
of admitted it. He
Oh,
had
really?
to
The
go.
big tour that he
had
started
to
several
go-
years ago was because
he
he
understood.
owed so much money.
Yeah, he had to go back and start from scratch. But what he said is that it actually brought him back to life and being more vital. Because as he said in one of his latest interviews, the only thing I know to do except touring is washing dishes.
Yes, yes. I say the same thing about journalism all the time. But you know,
We're
that
all in the
said,
same boat
I
here.
love that he was, doing Zen and yoga and whatnot. And he's also had a very fascinating life. This is the man who actually, I think it was it the Yom Kippur War that he volunteered in Israel and running around the hills of southern Israel and singing to the troops. And then there was a whole period in Greece. But this is a man who actually, why do you think that he attracts? So, because the new generation, young people love him as well.
I waited for those questions. Where are you?
I have
been
no
waiting
idea.
for
It's
that.
Monday. Cut me some slack. Yes.
I've been trying to think what really makes him so.
You know that you should never answer my question. You should just speak about what you want to speak. That's the trick with me. Go ahead. Yes.
But it's great when you raise them up.
Yeah, that works synergy. Yes.
Yeah, it's two of us. No, I thought about him even this morning. What makes him so unique? And I thought that he's over age. I mean, the youngsters love him.
They love him. Why?
And then we have to go back to that genuine point. Something about the honesty, about the ability to write those songs that they're updated.
Yeah.
Remember that song in the soundtrack of Oliver Stone film, Waiting for a Miracle?
Yes.
That was
yes.
probably the best rock song of that year. He's always ahead. He's always on top. And I think maybe it helped him that he didn't burn himself to 50 records in 50 years.
Because, I mean, if I look at him and Dylan, Dylan is still huge, but does he garner, I don't know if Dylan will garner that much of a crowd. It seems like that Leonard Cohen is actually updating himself in many ways, but in the same genre.
And let's talk about that point, because Bob Dylan was also here 3 years ago,
right.
at the same stadium. He didn't give himself to the crowd.
That's true.
Leonard Cohen
That's a Dylan and Cohen type of, they have such a different persona on stage and their way to communicate
and I'm
with the crowd.
not saying that Leonard Cohen is a crowd pleaser, but when he's on stage, he's doing it with all his heart.
Yeah.
Bob Dylan even refused to have video screens while performing
Right,
in Israel.
right.
So most people couldn't hear him well, couldn't see him well.
No, I got to tell you, the Leonard Cohen concert that I attended, in Israel several years ago. Yes, I was there. You had the screens, but it still was intimate.
So intimate.
He didn't say no to the screens. You had them. You had this moment of, everybody was lighting a candle at the same time at Hallelujah, and you felt close to him, and it's very true. I think it's the giving to the audience at the end of the day that's something that keeps
And I think also his own appreciation to music and the craft, just the amount of times he thanked his band,
right,
and and featured his fellow musicians.
Yeah.
It was just, it's like he gives them so much respect. He gives the craft so much respect. I think the audience have to do the same.
No, I've got tears right now.
And let us not be too. We have to say that word. He's so cool.
He's so cool. I know. No. He's and the hat and the thingies. Yes, Leonard Cohen is just really, really cool.
And he was born in Canada.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a little bit of a turn off.
No, I'm saying that's a miracle itself.
I have no idea. I had no idea. He is Canadian?
Yeah.
Right. But but very, very, very cool. And it reminds me, and with that I have to say, remember the movie Almost Famous? Mm-hmm. And there's a great scene there where Seymour Hoffman says to the kid, the late Seymour Hoffman, says to the kid, because that's the rest of us. He's so cool, and we recognize the coolness because he says to the kid, honey, I've met you. You're not cool, and that's us. We're great, but Leonard Cohen is cool.
He's cool.
Yeah, that's like the essence of cool. Very, 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 very true. Okay, and we are joined by Ronnie Stav in studio. That was a great discussion. Ori, don't go anywhere because we've locked the door.
I'm staying with Ronnie.
Yes.
I don't have
You have
anything to
anywhere
do
else to
except
go.
dishes anyway.
Bingo. Cultural contributor Ronnie Stav. Tell me, what do you have for us today?
Okay, first of all, I just want to add something else to the Leonard Cohen.
On the Love Fest.
The Love Fest for Leonard Cohen. There's another book that is being released alongside not with the album, but at the same time, a book of photography about his whole Zen and Buddhism.
Oh, nice.
Special photography that was never released before. So it's another interesting thing too.
The Zen and Buddhism, but not recommended if your partner's going to steal everything.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So I feel like this whole morning edition is like back in time.
Amen.
So I'm gonna give you some news that are gonna sound a little weird.
No.
Michael Jackson and Freddie Mercury are about to collaborate on a new song that will be released very soon. How is that?
Yeah.
I know. So exactly. So let's take 33 years back in time. They first began working on the track, and Queen will finally release the track There Must Be More Than Life to This.
Wait, they actually worked on that track together?
Yeah, 33 years ago. Now, the track is called There Must Be More Than Life to This.
You're kidding.
Yes,
Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody has engineered this. Well, first of all, truth be told, I'm a huge Freddie Mercury fan.
Oh,
okay,
yes.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm not.
Oh, no, he's so...
Queen, big time, big bottom girls. Are you kidding?
He's a phenomenal musician. You can like him, you cannot like him. He's a
phenomenal
phenomenal
singer,
musician.
and
Yes,
the whole nine
absolutely.
yards. So this is a collaboration 30 years ago. Was the track completed, ever recorded?
It
No.
was not completed.
Right.
And
How are they going to do that then?
So Freddie Mercury ended up deciding to release it on his own on his 1985 debut album, Mr. Bad Guy.
Okay.
And he did it on his own, and it was part of the Hot Space sessions, but they never finished it.
Okay.
So now they brought in producer William Orbit, that is best known.
How old was Michael Jackson at the time when they worked on this together?
I don't know.
He was a kid.
No,
Yeah?
85.
Oh, 85. Sorry.
Yeah.
No,
Sorry. 85. He was like
after the
huge.
Thriller.
Yeah,
What
no,
are we
it was
saying?
like 1980s, because
Okay.
85 he already released it on his own,
Right,
Mercury on his
right.
own.
Beginning.
Yeah,
Okay.
so he was
hot.
Yeah, he was hot.
Yeah,
he was. Yeah,
a couple of people knew who Jackson was.
Yeah, it was right.
kind of happening. So now, producer William Orbit, that is best known for his work on Madonna's "Ray of Light," he was brought in to complete the track.
Right.
Now, Mercury's version is very much like a stripped back version, and this new Orbit produced version, it adds strings and guitars. According to Rolling Stones, it's more bombast. So we'll see.
More Jackson-esque.
Yeah, more something like that.
More commercial, we'll say it.
Yeah,
Yes.
and Queen is on a roll in general. They have been touring this past summer with Adam Lambert. They just finished their last show in New Zealand on September 4th. I know, and they have been saying that maybe they'll do more shows. So
please.
I don't know.
Rhapsody right here. I know. Yeah.
It's back.
Becoming in habit. By the way, the Beatles' last reunion was when Lennon, of course, was
right.
Yeah, they took like two old demos of John Lennon and put the strings and cellos
and try to so
it's worthwhile being a singer. You rock on after you die. I said it.
Yes. So November 11th, it will be available. And the one thing that is interesting about this set is that they are not using any hits. They're not. It's not going to have Bohemian Rhapsodies and We Will Rock You.
It's actually,
it's going to be more Mother Love, The Miracle, Drowse, songs that are really for Queen's fans, which is nice. They're not
Big Bottom Girls.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's probably, if you don't know, then it's probably going to be in it.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, okay,
so it's nice, they're not really like trying to roll on that wave.
That wide thing.
It's a little bit more really for the Queen's fans. So
I'll be there.
I'm down. I'm
down.
I'm down.
We'll have to wait and see if it lasts until the second show. Because usually you start with good intentions.
If they stick around. What else?
So from dead albums
dead singers
to live albums. I was trying to do this.
Moving there, and now to the
just
living.
Moving, creating this little trail. Metallica is about to issue 27 live albums by the end of the year. Not our year, not Rosh Hashanah, in 2 more days, but 2014, which is pretty ambitious anyway. It's
27
live albums. So for the past decade, Metallica has been fighting the bootleggers' downloads on their soundboard recording of nearly every concert they ever played to download on their own livemetallica.com. Now, to commemorate the anniversary of the site, the group is offering CDs and LPs of every gig it played in 2014, and mostly featuring Metallica by request, the tours of South America and Europe, where they let the fans choose the songs. So
they're offering that for free?
No.
Because that's not really combating the
bootleg. They're giving you this pretty website. It's really good sound, and
some bootleggers are going to find out.
That's what they're going to do. But they're going to release it in 3 album batches each Monday throughout the end of the year in the order they play the shows, beginning with Bogota, Colombia, and it will also offer a box set of 27 shows that will ship in December. Now, there are also going to be a limited edition of vinyl records that are going to be, and the fans are going to choose which shows should be on those vinyl.
There's no end for greediness.
Exactly, no end for greediness. Guys, Sally, all the time we have, because we celebrated Leonard. Uri Miskov, thank you for being with us. Sony Stuff, as always, keep it going for the next time. And check us out, I-24 News Morning Edition on Facebook, on Twitter. Of course, do not forget to tune in tomorrow morning for your morning edition, the place you should be, because we're watching you. Thank you for being with us.